The human explorer, Daniel Reeve, stared at the smoke rising from his small ship. He had crash-landed in Sector 9, a forbidden moon on the edge of the alien system called Varelis. Its communication panel was broken, fuel gone, and night was coming fast. The wind here made no sound, and even the trees looked scared, their long blue leaves trembling without reason. Daniel took his gear and began walking across the rocky surface, hoping to find shelter or signs of life. Hours passed, and the silence became heavier. No birds, no insects, not even wind between the mountains, just silence. Thick like a blanket over everything. Then he saw a small camp, hidden between the rocks. But something was wrong. Tents were ripped open, metal crates smashed, and deep green slime marked the ground. It wasn't blood, but it wasn't natural either. Tools lay scattered, and a child's small shoe sat alone near a burned-out fire. Daniel crouched down and picked it up, heart pounding. What happened here? He whispered to himself. He moved closer to a dark cave near the camp, his flashlight shaking slightly in his hand. Then he heard it, barely a sound. Just a soft, trembling cry, a child's cry, coming from deep within the shadows. "Hello," Daniel called gently. "I won't hurt you." The cry stopped. Silence returned, and then, slowly, a small figure stepped out. It was a young alien girl, no more than 8 human years old. Her skin was a pale lavender, her eyes large and glowing green. She wore a torn silver suit, and her white hair was tangled with dirt and leaves. But what caught Daniel's attention was her back hit was wrapped tightly in glowing bandages. She held her arms around herself and stared at him, scared and silent. "What's your name?" Daniel asked softly, kneeling down to her level. The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Lyra, Lyra, are you hurt?" He asked, looking at the glowing bandages. She shook her head fast. "Not hurt, not yet." "What do you mean?" "Oh," she looked around, scared, then leaned closer, whispering, "Don't let them take me back." Daniel frowned. "Who?" She pointed at the stars above, her voice trembling. "The ones who put this thing inside me." Daniel felt a chill in his chest. "What thing?" Lyra slowly turned, pulling her bandages down. Daniel froze from her spine. Strange. Glowing lines were spreading out like veins of light under her skin. It pulsed gently, like it was alive, like it was growing. Lyra's breathing became faster, and she covered it quickly. "They said it would make me strong," she whispered. "But I don't want it." Daniel gently reached for her shoulder. "I'll help you, Lyra." She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. "You can't. No one can." He lifted her carefully into his arms. She was so light, so fragile. "I don't know what this is," he said. "But you're not alone anymore." He carried her back to his ship, heart full of questions and fear. Inside the broken ship, he made a small bed for her, gave her water and food. She ate slowly, watching him the whole time, like she didn't trust him yet. Daniel checked his ship's computer, trying to send a weak signal for help. Nothing worked, but then an alert popped on the screen and alien signal was approaching. Something, or someone, was coming fast toward their location. Lyra's face turned pale. "They found me," she whispered. "Who is it?" Daniel asked, stepping in front of her. Protectively, "My mother," she said. "She's coming." Daniel blinked, confused. "Your mother did this to you?" "No," Lyra said softly. "She tried to stop them, but now, I don't know if she still will." Outside, a shadow moved across the sky, and the sound of a ship landing echoed through the valley. The silence was broken, but only by the sound of danger drawing near. Daniel held Lyra close, ready for whatever would come through that door. But deep in his heart, he wasn't ready for what her mother was about to reveal, because what was growing inside the child was not just a secret. It was a weapon, a curse, and maybe the end of them all. The ship landed with a deep hum that shook the ground beneath Daniel's feet. He stood at the entrance of his broken craft, holding Lyra behind him. Dust swirled around the landing site, and the wind carried a strange humming sound. Lyra clutched Daniel's jacket tightly, her glowing eyes wide with fear. "She's here," she whispered. "My mother found us." Daniel watched as the alien ship's ramp lowered, slow and heavy. Then he saw her, a tall alien woman, in dark armor, silver marks glowing across her cheeks. Her posture was like a warrior's, straight and sharp. She carried a long staff with lights on both ends and had a strange device attached to her arm. Her gaze landed directly on Daniel, and her eyes burned with fury. "You," she growled, stepping forward. "What have you done to my daughter?" Daniel raised his hand slowly. "I didn't hurt her," he said calmly. "I found her. Alone, scared. She came to me." The alien woman didn't stop. The lights on her staff glowed brighter. "She is a child of Elzari blood," she said coldly. "You have no right to touch her." Lyra stepped out from behind Daniel, her voice soft but firm. "Mom, please, don't hurt him." The woman froze mid-step, her breath catching in her throat. "Lyra," she whispered, her voice suddenly breaking. "You're alive." She dropped her staff and rushed forward, falling to her knees and wrapping her arms around the girl. Lyra buried her face in her mother's chest, whispering, "I thought I'd never see you again." Alcia, the warrior mother, held her tight and whispered something in a language Daniel couldn't understand. Tears ran down her face, but her body shook with quiet rage. Daniel took a step back, giving them space, unsure what to say. Then Velcia stood, her arms still around Lyra, but her eyes locked onto Daniel again. "You truly didn't harm her?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "I gave her food, water, and shelter. Nothing else." Velcia looked at her daughter, then sighed. "Then I owe you thanks." And warning, she motioned for Daniel to sit, and together the three of them gathered around a small fire Daniel built. Lyra sat between them, silent, her eyes downcast. Velcia began to speak, voice soft but heavy with truth. "Years ago," she said, "our people tried something unthinkable. They believed war was the only path forward, so they created the Zoran program." Daniel frowned. "What kind of program?" Velcia looked at the fire, her eyes reflecting the light. "A weapon grown inside children, planted in the spine as a seed." Daniel's stomach turned. Lyra was part of that. Velcia nodded. "Against my will, they took her when she was just born, injected her with a living organism designed to grow inside her, feed off her, and one day awaken." Lyra hugged herself tightly, her voice small. "It hurts sometimes." Daniel leaned closer. "What happens when it fully grows?" Velcia's voice turned cold. "It becomes a hive trigger, if activated. It sends a signal across space, waking ancient machines buried in our homeworld. Weapons no one can stop." Daniel stared at her, shocked. "She's a walking time bomb." Velcia nodded again, pain clear in her face. "That's why I ran away from my people. I stole her back and fled, but they tracked us. We were ambushed, and in the chaos, she was taken again. I've been searching for her for 6 months across dead moons and burnt planets." Daniel looked at Lyra, who now seemed even smaller than before. She whispered, "They told me it was a gift, that I would be special." Velcia closed her eyes tightly. They lied. Silence filled the room again, heavy and sharp. Then Lyra stood slowly and turned her back to them. She lowered the glowing bandages, and for the first time, Velsia saw what Daniel had seen. Glowing vines beneath her daughter's skin, pulsing with slow light, now reaching toward her shoulders. Velsia gasped and fell to her knees, her hands over her mouth. No. It's too soon, she cried. She's changing, Daniel said. Is there any way to stop it? Velsia looked up, her face pale. There was a cure, but it was destroyed in the rebellion, unless, she paused, eyes wide. Unless the signal can be blocked before it spreads to her brain. Daniel stood. I have old Terran tech in my ship. Maybe we can create a blocker. Velsia looked at him with fresh hope. You would help us. Daniel nodded. I won't let her suffer, not on my watch. Lyra looked between them, then smiled a little, the first time in days. Thank you, she whispered. But outside, in the darkness of the rocky valley, another sensor lit up. Another ship was coming. Not family, not help. Something else had found them, and it was not friendly. The fire crackled softly as Velsia sat with her daughter wrapped in her arms. Daniel worked silently nearby, digging through his ship's broken systems, trying to find anything he could use to help. Outside, the sensors kept blinking. Something was watching them from a distance, but for now, all eyes were on Lyra and the thing growing inside her back. Velsia stared at the glowing lines under her daughter's skin. Her hands trembling, she looked older than before, as if the pain of memory aged her in minutes. Daniel returned, carrying a small scanner and a handful of wires. This won't stop it, he said, but it might help us understand what's happening inside her. Lyra sat still while Daniel gently waved the scanner across her spine. The device beeped softly, then projected a small 3D image in the air. Inside her body, deep along the bones, was something alive. A strange glowing structure was forming, like a root system, pulsing gently in rhythm with her heartbeat. What is that? Daniel asked, eyes wide. Velsia's voice was low, bitter. It's called a Sealith core, it was supposed to be the next step in warfare, she continued. A weapon that could think, feel, adapt, and even grow. Daniel shook his head, inside a child. Velsia nodded slowly. The High Order believed innocent minds would stabilize the core, make it less violent, but the early tests failed. Children died. Their bodies couldn't handle the growth. Lyra whispered. They told me. It was a gift, but it feels like poison. Daniel touched the edge of the hologram and rotated it. He zoomed in on the glowing structure, noticing small black spikes beginning to form. These look like signal antennas, he said. This thing is preparing to connect with something. Velsia's face turned pale. The hive? What's the hive? Daniel asked. Velsia's eyes filled with fear. Machines buried on our homeworld. Created before our time, ancient weapons, asleep for now. But if awakened, they will wipe out everything. Not just humans or aliens, but all life. Daniel stood up, so the moment this thing activates, it sends a signal to those machines. Yes, Velsia said, and then they rise. Lyra covered her ears, tears falling down her cheeks. I don't want to destroy anyone, she cried. I just want to be normal. Daniel knelt beside her. You are not a weapon, Lyra. You're a child, and we're going to stop this thing. Velsia turned away, her voice suddenly distant. There was once a way to remove the core, she said. A process, dangerous, illegal, and kept secret. I tried to find it years ago, but all the files were erased, and the scientists were silenced. Only one place still holds the method. Daniel raised his eyebrow. Where? Velsia looked out into the darkness, her eyes filled with pain. Zerath Vault, deep beneath the ashes of the old capital. But it's protected by ancient security and something worse. Before Daniel could ask, the ship's warning lights turned red. "Something's coming," he said. Standing up fast, Velsia grabbed her staff and pulled Lyra behind her. From the cave entrance, a loud hum began to grow, followed by a clicking sound. Out of the shadows stepped a tall, insect-like creature with armor-plated skin and 4 glowing eyes. It wasn't one of Velsia's people. It was a seeker, a hunter machine built to find and reclaim Sealith cores. "They found her," Velsia growled. "They want the core back." Daniel fired a warning shot from his plasma pistol. The blast hitting the ground near the seeker's feet. It didn't flinch, only raised its long arm. And a red light started to charge at the tip. Velsia shouted, "Run!" The 3 of them sprinted deeper into the rocks, Daniel leading them through narrow tunnels behind the camp. The seeker fired once. The ground exploded behind them, sending stone and dust flying. Lyra tripped, crying out as her back began to glow again. Daniel picked her up quickly and kept running. They finally reached a deeper cave, and Velsia used her staff to collapse the entrance behind them. The dust settled, and for a moment, everything went quiet again. Daniel placed Lyra down and checked her pulse. She was breathing, but weak Velsia leaned against the cave wall, shaking her head. "They'll keep coming now," she said, "until they either take her or destroy her." Daniel looked at both of them, his voice steady. "Then we go to this Zerath Vault." Velsia looked surprised. "You'd follow us into enemy territory?" Daniel nodded. "Lyra deserves a chance. She deserves to live." Lyra opened her eyes slowly, smiling through tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her glow dimming for now. But all of them knew the real danger had just begun, and the secret, locked inside the vault, might be their only hope. The cave was cold and silent, except for Lyra's slow breathing. Daniel sat close by, holding a small glowing device from his backpack. Trying to adjust its settings, Velsia stood near the sealed entrance, listening carefully for any sounds outside. The rocks were thick, but seeker machines were persistent. They would find another path eventually. Time was running out. Lyra lay on a bed of dried moss, her body trembling gently. Her back had started to glow again, this time brighter, the light pulsing faster than before. Daniel glanced at the device in his hand, and then at Lyra. "The pulse is increasing," he said. "The core's growth. It's speeding up." Velsia clenched her fists, her eyes filled with pain. "She's entering the next phase." She whispered, "This is what I feared." Daniel looked confused. "What phase?" Velsia stepped closer, her voice heavy. "The Sealith core grows in layers," she said. "First it connects to the spine, then it spreads through the nerves. But the 3rd phase is activation." Daniel's face went pale. "She become a transmitter," Velsia nodded. "Once that happens, her body won't be hers anymore. She'll send the signal even if she doesn't want to." Suddenly, Lyra sat up, her face covered in sweat. "It's burning," she cried softly. "Inside me, something is moving." Daniel rushed to her side and placed a small sensor on her neck. The screen showed her heart rate to fast and glowing heat spots spreading along her back. "I need to cool her down," he said, opening a cold pack. From his kit, he placed it on her spine, and the glow dimmed slightly. Lyra took a deep breath, tears in her eyes. "Why is this happening to me?" Velsia knelt beside her, brushing her white hair gently. "My sweet child," she said, "you were never supposed to carry this." Daniel sat back against the wall, thinking hard. "There has to be a way to delay the activation," he said. "Even if just for a day or two, Until we reach the vault, Velsia looked at him. We'll need a vehicle, protection, and coordinates. I can fix my ship's skimmer, Daniel said, but the battery's dead. I have one, Velsia replied, pulling a small power core from her belt. We use it for weapons, but it will work together. They worked through the night, patching wires, testing circuits, and recharging the old skimmer. Meanwhile, Lyra slept, but her body kept glowing in slow waves. Sometimes she whimpered in her sleep. Sometimes her hands twitched like she was fighting something inside. Velsia paused while fixing a panel and said quietly, "She's dreaming of the hive." Daniel looked up, surprised. "How do you know?" "She told me once," Velsia replied, "when the core grows stronger. It connects to the memories of the ancient machines. She sees things even I cannot imagine. She said it's full of voices, cold and endless, calling her by name, just." Before dawn, the skimmer lit up with power, its engine humming low and steady. Daniel smiled. "We're ready." Velsia checked her weapon and nodded. "The vault is hidden in the ashlons. 4 hours from here. We need to move now, Daniel." Gently woke Lyra, who sat up slowly, eyes still glowing softly. "Are we going somewhere?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "To a place that might help us stop this thing." Lyra nodded weakly. "I'll try to be strong." Velsia helped her onto the skimmer, wrapping her in a blanket and securing her gently as they raced across the dead plains of Varelis. The world around them changed. Trees became stone, the sky turned gray, and ash fell like soft snow. Once this land had been alive, filled with cities and song, but now only ruins remained. Buried under dust and time, Lyra looked out at the passing landscape, her voice quiet. "Do you think I'll ever be normal?" Daniel looked at her and answered gently, "You already are. You're just going through something unfair." Lyra smiled a little, but her glow flickered again. Faster than before, Daniel noticed and said, "The core's waking again." Velsia checked her scanner. "We're close." 20 more minutes, but just then, the skimmer's alarm beeped loudly. 3 dots appeared on the radar seekers, coming fast from behind. "They found us again," Velsia growled. "They never stop." Daniel pressed the throttle. "Harder, hold on." The skimmer dashed over broken ground, dodging sharp rocks and fallen towers behind them. The seekers glided like shadows, firing red beams that scorched the earth. Lyra screamed as her body began glowing uncontrollably, her back almost blinding now. "She's overheating," Daniel shouted. "I can't stop the core." Velsia activated a shield generator, forming a glowing dome around them for a few seconds. It gave them just enough time to cross the old bridge leading to the vault entrance. The vault doors rose slowly from the ground as they approached, covered in dust and symbols as soon as they reached it. Velsia entered an old code from memory. The doors opened with a loud hiss, and the skimmer dove inside. The gates shut just as the seeker beam struck them, causing a loud explosion outside. Inside the vault, it was silent, dark, and filled with forgotten knowledge. Lyra collapsed in 2. Daniel's arms, her glow fading slightly again. "She's close to the final phase," Velsia whispered. Daniel looked around the vault, his voice steady. "Then let's find the cure before we lose her." The vault was dark and cold. Dust floated in the air, and broken machines lined the walls. Old lights flickered above as Daniel, Velsia, and Lyra stepped inside. Their footsteps echoed as they walked deeper into the forgotten place. Lyra's glow lit the way, casting strange patterns on the floor and walls. Velsia moved with purpose, leading them down narrow halls, filled with ancient scripts and locked doors. "This place used to be a medical lab," she said, "but later, it became a prison for knowledge." Daniel looked around carefully, his eyes scanning each terminal and control panel. Do you know where the files are stored? I asked. Yes, Velsia answered, but getting access will require something. Living Lyra stumbled suddenly, clutching her chest. Daniel caught her just in time. Laying her gently on the floor, she's burning up again, he said, touching her forehead. Velsia checked her scanner, eyes wide with fear. The core is reaching her mind. We don't have long. They reached a locked chamber. Sealed by a glowing panel, Velsia placed her hand on it. But the door didn't open. It's coded for human biosignature, she said, turning to Daniel. The ancient scientists didn't trust anyone else to activate this room. Daniel stepped forward without hesitation. Placing his palm against the scanner, it beeped once, scanned his body, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, lights turned on, revealing a circular chamber filled with old machines. In the center stood a glowing platform surrounded by cables and pods. A hologram flickered to life in the air. An old man's face appeared. This is Medical Chamber X-17, the voice said. Do you wish to proceed with Sealith core removal protocol? Velsia nodded fast. Yes, we do. The hologram paused, then said, Caution procedure requires a live neural link with compatible human subject. Daniel looked at Velsia. What does that mean? She lowered her eyes. The system needs a human brain to connect with the core, to guide the extraction. It can't do it alone. Daniel stared at her, then looked at Lyra, who lay weakly on the floor. You mean? I have to link with her mind. Velsia nodded slowly. Yes, and it will hurt. Maybe worse than anything you've ever felt. Daniel stepped back, thinking he had no reason to do this. Lyra wasn't his daughter. This wasn't his war. But then he looked at her small face, pale and glowing with pain. He remembered the first time she whispered, Don't send me back. She had trusted him. When she had no one else, I'll do it, Daniel said. Velsia's eyes widened. You don't have to. There must be another way. There isn't, Daniel replied, stepping onto the platform. If I don't do this, she dies. And that core destroys everything. He smiled weakly. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. Velsia helped connect wires to his neck and temples, her hands trembling. The hologram guided them, activating the neural bridge between. Daniel and Lyra, then Velsia gently lifted her daughter onto the opposite platform. Lyra's breathing was slow, but her eyes fluttered open for a moment. You'll be okay, Daniel whispered. I'm with you. The machine began to hum, and a beam of light connected them both. Daniel gasped as his mind was pulled into darkness. He felt cold, lost. Then he opened his eyes, and he was inside Lyra's mind. It was a vast place, full of shadows and strange shapes. Mechanical vines moved along walls made of memories. In the center stood the Sealith, core glowing, pulsing, alive. It turned toward him. Like it could see him. You are not part of us, it said. Voice like metal and thunder, Daniel stood firm. I'm here to take her back. The core laughed. She is ours. Born for this. Chosen? No. Daniel shouted, She's just a child. The core lashed out, sending pain through Daniel's body. He screamed, but stood tall. Pushing forward, he reached out, placing his hand on the core. You don't belong here. He said, Leave her alone. The core pulsed violently, trying to fight him off. But Daniel pushed harder, his mind filling with memories, Lyra's laughter, her tears, her dreams of being free. The core began to crack, light spilling. Out of it, outside, in the real world, Lyra arched her back, glowing brighter than ever. Velsia cried out, Hold on, Daniel, please. Inside the mental space, Daniel gave one final push. The core shattered into a million lights, fading away into silence. Suddenly, everything went black. The link broke, the light faded, and the machine powered down. Daniel collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Lyra gasped and took a deep breath. The glow gone, her back now still and quiet. Velsia rushed to them, checking her daughter first. She was alive. Safe. Then she turned to Daniel, tears in her eyes. He wasn't moving. Please, she whispered, placing her hand on his chest. Don't leave us now. Velsia held Daniel's body in her arms, her heart pounding wildly. His skin was cold, his chest unmoving, his eyes shut tightly like he was lost somewhere far away. Beside them, Lyra sat up slowly, blinking as if waking from a long nightmare. Her back no longer glowed. No pain, no heat. Just smooth skin and faint, quiet veins. The Sealith core was gone. Mom? Lyra whispered. What happened? Velsia turned, eyes wet with tears, trying to hide her trembling voice. You're free now, she said softly. He gave you your life back. Lyra's eyes went wide as she saw Daniel lying still. No, she whispered, crawling over to him. Please, wake up. The vault was quiet. Only the hum of old machines still pulsing gently in the background. Velsia placed a hand on Daniel's chest, waiting, hoping. A full minute passed in silence. Then faintly his chest rose just once. Velsia gasped. He's alive. Lyra laughed through her tears, holding Daniel's hand tight, slowly. Daniel's eyes opened, blinking against the soft light above. He coughed once, then smiled weakly. Did it work? Velsia nodded quickly. You broke the core. It's gone. Daniel closed his eyes, relief flooding his face. Good, he whispered. She's safe. Velsia helped him sit up, though he was weak and shaking. You shouldn't move. Yet, she warned, your mind took a heavy hit. Daniel leaned back against the wall and looked at Lyra. You look different, he said with a smile. Hey, you're glowing in a better way now. Lyra grinned, hugging him carefully. Thank you for not giving up. They stayed in the vault for a few more hours, letting Daniel rest. Velsia patched his wounds and monitored his brainwaves. Lyra sat quietly, humming a tune she barely remembered, something soft and old. There was peace now. But they all knew it wouldn't last forever. Later that day, Velsia stood near the main console, typing in codes from memory. What are you doing? Daniel asked. I'm erasing the vault's knowledge, she said. If the Sealith core data ever falls into the wrong hands again, the galaxy will suffer. Daniel nodded. Good idea. Lyra looked worried. What if someone else is like me? Velsia paused. Then we'll help them, like you were helped after shutting the vault down. They climbed back into the skimmer. Outside, the land was still ash, covering everything. The seeker ship's gone. Velsia checked the sky. We should return to my outpost. It's not much, but it's hidden and safe. As they traveled back, Daniel rested with his head leaned against the side of the skimmer. He kept glancing at Lyra, who now smiled at the clouds. Her eyes bright with hope. She was no longer afraid, no longer running. When they arrived at Velsia's outpost, a small mountain shelter built inside a rocky cliff. Daniel helped carry supplies inside while Lyra explored the rooms. She found a small bed, soft blankets, and even a music box that played alien lullabies. Velsia watched her from the doorway, tears quietly forming in her eyes. She has a future now, she whispered. Daniel stood beside her, nodding slowly. She's strong, he said, stronger than we gave her credit for. Velsia turned to him, her voice softer than ever. You saved her life. And mine. Daniel looked down, unsure how to respond. He didn't see himself as a hero, just a man who couldn't walk away from a child in pain. Velsia placed a hand on his arm. "I will never forget what you did," she said. And neither will she. Over the next few days, Daniel helped fix broken systems in the outpost. Velsia taught him how to use some of her people's tech. Lyra painted pictures of stars and fields, dreams she now believed she could chase. For the first time in a long while, laughter filled the halls. One night, as they sat by a warm fire inside the cave, Daniel asked softly, "What will you do?" Now, Velsia looked at Lyra, who was asleep on a blanket, curled up peacefully. "I'll raise her in peace," she said. "Keep her hidden from the people who want to use her. She deserves a quiet life." Daniel nodded. "And you?" she asked, looking at him. He shrugged. "Maybe I'll stick around a while, help with repairs." Velsia smiled gently. "You're welcome here, always." Silence settled between them again, but it wasn't the silence of fear. It was peace. Earned through pain and sacrifice, a silence filled with meaning. Daniel looked at Lyra. Then back at the stars, visible through the cave skylight. So much of the galaxy was still broken, still dangerous. But here, in this little corner of ash and stone, something had been healed. Not with weapons, not with war, but with a choice, a human choice, to save instead of destroy. Weeks passed, and the harsh lands of Varellus began to feel like home. The ash-covered skies cleared more often, and strange glowing plants started to return near the cliffs. The old outpost, once silent and broken, now echoed with soft laughter and quiet joy. Daniel repaired the solar towers. Velsia set traps to keep seeker drones away. And Lyrashi changed more than anyone, no longer haunted by fear or pain. Lyra woke each day with a new sparkle in her eyes. Her steps were light, her voice no longer shaky. She painted the walls of the outpost with stars and glowing lines that danced in the dark. Every morning, she stood outside and watched the sun peek over the mountain. Her back no longer hurt, but something had started to grow there againly this time. It wasn't dark. Velsia noticed it first. One quiet evening when Lyra removed her coat on her shoulders, where once the glowing vines had pulsed in pain. Now soft silver lines extended outward. They shimmered gently, curved like branches. "Made of light wings," Velsia whispered, breath-catching. "She's growing wings." Daniel looked closer, wide-eyed. "But that's impossible." Velsia shook her head slowly. "No, the core didn't die. It transformed." Daniel stepped back in awe. "She's not a weapon anymore. She's something new." Over the next few days, Lyra's wings continued to form. Not large, not heavy, but beautiful, semi-transparent. Glowing softly like morning frost. They responded to her mood, bright when she laughed, dim when she was tired. They didn't help her fly, not yet, but something inside her had changed forever. One afternoon, as Lyra danced across the high cliffs, arms out wide, her feet kicking up ash, Daniel sat with Velsia, sipping warm broth under the shade of a makeshift canopy. "She's becoming something your people never expected," he said. Velsia nodded, her eyes following her daughter with pride. "They tried to make her a destroyer," she said. "But she became something beautiful." Lyra turned toward them suddenly, her voice full of energy. Look what I can do," she shouted. She jumped from a small ledge, and for the first time, her wings caught the air. She didn't fly, but she floated down slowly, like a falling leaf dancing on the breeze. When she landed, she laughed and threw her hands up. "I flew a little," she said. Beaming, Velsia ran to her, pulling her into a hug. "You're amazing," she said. her voice trembling with joy. Daniel watched, smiling to himself. Feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't known for years. This girl, once marked for destruction, now glowed like a new star in a dead sky. That night, they sat around the fire, and Lyra asked softly, "Do you think I'm still part of that old program?" Velsia shook her head. "No, you're beyond it now." Daniel leaned in. "You are what they feared most." Lyra blinked. "What's that?" Daniel smiled. "Hope." They spent the next days building a new room for Lyra, a place full of light, paint, and music. She named it Sky Room, even though there was no sky above it, just stone and stars. Each night, she stood on the edge of the cliff and stretched her arms, practicing balance. Learning the feel of her wings, Velsia taught her to meditate, to listen to her new body. Daniel helped her create small gliders, hoping one day she might soar. And one quiet morning, it happened. The wind was just right, the cliffs high enough. Lyra stepped to the edge, looked down, then looked back at them. "Are you sure?" Velsia called out, her voice shaking. Lyra nodded. "I feel ready." Daniel took a deep breath. "Then go." Lyra smiled, took a step back, then ran forward and leaped. For a moment, she dropped like a stone. Then her wings spread fully. Catching the wind with perfect timing, she lifted, not high, but enough to glide, enough to fly. Velsia cried openly, watching her daughter float across the sky like a dream. Daniel stood frozen, then slowly raised his hand. Lyra flew in a slow circle, her laugh echoing in the open sky. She landed gently on a far ledge. Waving back at them, "I'm free," she shouted. "I'm really free." That night, under the stars, they sat around the fire again. Velsia leaned toward Daniel and asked quietly, "What now?" Daniel looked up at the stars, then at Lyra, who was drawing on the stone with glowing paint. "We stay," he said. "We protect her. And anyone like her who might still be out there." Velsia nodded, her voice steady. "Then this place becomes a home, not just for her, but for others who need peace." Daniel raised his cup. Two new beginnings. Lyra ran to join them, sitting between them, glowing softly in the night. She had grown wings, yes, but more than that. She had grown a soul free of fear, and she had reminded them both what it meant to fight, not for war, but for love, for life, for hope.